Last time I checked, this is a sales conference, correct? And how many people in here consider themselves a salesperson? So then usually you are animated and you usually like to talk, call and response, we call it. So when someone says good morning to you, you normally would say, or if someone says buongiorno or bonjour, then now what we want to be able to do is have a discussion this morning. So far, the first two speakers were fantastic. I thank them for their comments that they've made. But last time I checked, this is a sales conference, and we want to talk about Salesforce productivity and look at Salesforce effectiveness. So what I'd like to do for the next 15 to 20 minutes is go through a couple of slides that represent the challenges all of us are facing and all of us are managing every day as we look at our sales models. I believe everyone in here knows someone or has personally been affected by some of the changes that we've all experienced in our industries. And I'm not talking about just pharmaceutical companies. I'm talking about biotech companies. I'm talking about device companies. And what we are seeing are tremendous transformations in our various life science industries. And there are forces afoot, not just in the United States, but also in Europe and in every emerging market that is forcing all of us to rethink and to recalibrate. So having left Merck, I've spent the last 3 years, not only at the university, but I spent the last 3 years spending time with companies in emerging markets, companies from around the world, looking at their go-to-market strategy, looking at what they do and what they're trying to do in order to have a winning competitive advantage in the marketplace. And so what I want to do in the next couple of minutes is share with you not only the issues that we face, but try to put out in front of you 2 or 3 ideas that I would ask that you take with you and to see if maybe they may offer opportunities for you to think about the go-to-market model at your respective companies. So first of all, I saw this slide a couple of months ago, and it was put together by Deloitte & Touche, and it was a great model which at a high level says what each and every one of us is trying to do every day in terms of the pharmaceutical model. There are three important components for the pharmaceutical model. Number one is the area of development. Number 2 is diffusion, ensuring access around the world. And we all know that is a tremendous challenge in every market that you're in. Because if you're in foreign markets, governments want to talk to you about your price. In other markets, there's an issue about distribution and distribution channels. There's a whole issue of ownership and security. Our patents are being challenged every day. It doesn't matter which market you're in. In some markets, we have strong intellectual property laws that protect us, but unfortunately, some of the generic companies want to challenge the brand model. In other countries, they don't even respect the intellectual property rights. So it is a tremendous challenge for every pharmaceutical company to think about its intellectual property and how long they have to share the fruits of all their hard research to create the various products that we bring to market. And all of that is taking place in a very complex environment. So I think this is a very great slide, a very simple slide that puts together the first 2 speakers' slides when they talked about the environment. I rolled those all together in this one slide that says, this is what we're trying to manage every day. And some recent results of what we're trying to manage that we all see and all feel. Obviously, there's a lot of merger going on. And let's be honest about why these mergers are taking place. These mergers are taking place for a couple of very important reasons. First and foremost, most companies do not have internal research productivity that's going to fuel the kind of growth that they need. A company like Pfizer, for example, or a company like Merck, given the size of those companies, in order for them to be considered a growth company, they have to generate $5 billion a year in new growth to be considered a new growth company. That's hard to do when you haven't launched a new product that's a broadly used product in a couple of years. So what do? You go out and you merge with other companies. The other thing that's happening in our industry is that almost every company is looking at its capacity and they're realizing we have too much capacity. We have too much capacity in some markets, and in other markets that are new and emerging, we don't have enough capacity. And so what's happening in markets like the US, where at one time at our peak, we had 105,000 sales representatives at the peak. We're down to around 75,000 today, and that probably will get down to around 65,000 to 70,000 before it's done. Now, a lot of that capacity is being reallocated. I know that when I was sitting in the chair, I had to make those decisions to cut the size of those sales forces. Why? Because we needed to reallocate some of that money and some of that capacity to other markets. To markets, and one of the favorite expressions that someone used for me is there was a type of cheese. The type of cheese is called brie. How many are familiar with brie cheese? Right? So brie cheese is sometimes used to describe the emerging markets, right? Brazil, India, right, and the Eastern markets. And what we needed to figure out is if we take this capacity out of the United States and we reallocate it to the foreign markets, how much of it is the right amount to put in those new markets? And what is the right type of capacity to put in that market? These are the kinds of issues that we're struggling with every day to figure out. How do I reallocate the capacity? And when I reallocate the capacity, in what form do I reallocate the capacity? Now, it's important that I step back for a moment and give you my key hypothesis of what I'm basing everything on today. As I said before, I'm a sales leader. And as a sales leader, I believe three things. And these are the key points of my talk today. Number one, sales will continue to be a personal activity. We will still need individuals contacting and talking to other individuals in order to deliver the value proposition. I teach students every day to think about what is the value proposition. And a value proposition is three things. It's how companies create value, how they communicate value, and how they deliver that value. And you still need capable people to be able to communicate that value. Now, the way we do it and how we do it is certainly going to change. We have to have much more efficient ways of communicating and demonstrating that value. That absolutely is going to change. But we will still need human interpersonal contact in order to do that. Secondly, the model that we used 28 years ago when I first joined this industry does not work today. Is there anyone in the room, just want to check the room that I'm in. Is there anyone in the room that was in the pharmaceutical, biotech, or device industry 25 years ago? I know I was. Is there a few of us? Okay. How about 10 years ago? Okay, 5 years ago. Even if your experience was as recent as 5 years ago, your experience is dated because the customers are demanding more. And what we call value today is not what we called value 5 years ago. And the value proposition that is required in the future is not the value proposition that we're delivering today. Medicine itself is changing, and so the value proposition offered through medicine in and of itself is changing. The value proposition is also changing because the person who's making the decision of what an individual will inhale, ingest, or inject is changing. It is no longer an individual, it is a group of individuals. And those group of individuals are raising the bar on what is value. And if your companies are not thinking about that and figuring out what is value to a group of decision makers and what is the value replacing, then we have missed the mark in how we communicate and deliver value. Number three, and this is my third key point, it will require smart people thinking rationally and using our resources today in a different way to create tomorrow's value proposition. So those are my three takeaways for today, if you will. One, sales is still about people. Two, there has to be a different value proposition than what we deliver today. And three, people in this room have the ability to deliver that value proposition tomorrow. So let's talk about how we do that. Again, what our companies are doing, many of our companies are looking for partners to outsource capacity and to offload cost. What do we do once we offload capacity and we offload some of that cost is the subject of what we want to talk about today, and how do we create greater effectiveness and efficiency in our selling model.